Go.
Hi, everybody. My name is Morgan Luff, and I'm the Community Service Chair for the UF Student Nursing Association, and I'm here with a special guest to give you a presentation on the Springs of Florida.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vasilios Kosmakos. I'm an environmental historian that's been doing research on Florida waterways for the last 3 years. And I'm really excited to talk about why springs are important and why we should care about them. So first off, right, what are springs? Right, springs, as you can see here, are wonderful, crystal clear ecosystem, right? That where water comes, where water comes forth from the aquifer, right? So underneath our feet, we have a huge body of fresh water called the Florida Aquifer. That's where you get every single ounce of our drinking water, right? So, rain rains down, right? Rain seeps into the soil. It goes into this big body of underground water called aquifer, and then the way it comes back, and then it literally springs forth, right? It comes up into the surface right through our Florida springs, and that's why they're called springs. Springs are one of the rarest habitats in Florida. In fact, Florida springs are really unique in that we have more springs than anywhere else in the world. We also have the largest spring in the world called Wakulla Springs, which you guys may be familiar with. you know, um, Springs provide a really important habitat for a lot of different plants and animals, right? What makes springs super unique is that there's something that is that they're known as clear water ecosystems. So essentially, right, it the reason why the springs look so beautiful is because they're crystal clear. To any of us that have been to the springs, right? I'm sure some of you guys have gone to the springs during your summer or vacations or during your breaks. But water's super duper clear, right? Well, that's really different compared to some of those rivers that we kind of see, right, which are really brown, kind of almost tea colored. Well, when springs are clear, the reason why that's important is because sunlight is able to reach our plants, right? So just like on land, right? Plants need sunlight, water, and nutrients. Well, there's plenty of water because of the springs. Sunlight is able to reach the plants because they're clear, right? It's not dirty. And there's nutrients naturally occurring in the springs. So that's what allows for a lot of this plant growth to occur. Um, so springs in Florida, like I said, are super duper concentrated. Again, we have over 1,000 different springs. And as you can see in this map, right, a lot of these springs are actually really close together. Some of these springs are, within like a mile of each other. And that's really important to know because, when we're trying to save a lot of these springs, right, when we're trying to make the springs better, it's really important to understand that, we need to treat these things as one big problem instead of a bunch of small separate problems. So when you save, so like, if you look at this map here, you can see that some of these dots are right on top of each other. Well, how can you expect to save one spring, right, if the spring above it or below it, right, isn't doing well? You can't, because what happens is that, as you can see here, they're always sharing the same waterways. So water that comes out of one spring affects the other spring, and then all that water goes into the same river system, goes into the same river or creek or stream, and then goes all the way down to our coast. So all these waterways are super duper connected, right? It's like springs above you if springs affects springs below you, and eventually all of that ends up going to our oceans, right? So freshwater and saltwater are really interconnected. Right. So, like I mentioned earlier, right, springs are home to a huge variety of unique species. So, they host a variety of invertebrate species, right? Invertebrate, the word invertebrate just means without backbone. So me, fish, most of life, bears, birds, lizards, etc., right, have backbones. Well, but other things don't. So, for example, things like snails or crayfish or shrimp, right? They rely on something called an exoskeleton, right? So their skeleton, right, their backbone is on the outside of their bodies, unlike ours, which is our inside. And then there's also and springs are also home to a lot of vertebrate species. So, like I said, we're vertebrate species, right? Our bones are inside of us, right? We have a backbone, and that's like I mentioned earlier, pretty much anything else you can think of. So our manatees, our turtles, our fish, our alligators, right? A lot of the cool stuff you come to see around the springs, you know. And here's just an example of what I'm talking about. So we have a Swanee River cooter here, right, which are these beautiful yellow turtles. We have our striped bass, right, which so many schools of dozens and dozens of fish, right? It gets super duper cool. We have our manatees, which I'm sure a lot of you guys probably have seen or heard of, right? These these beautiful mammals, right? That they're just that swim with their babies through our springs, right? They go in saltwater and freshwater. And then we have things like crawfish, right? Which I'm sure you guys have seen or even eaten, which we kind of see here. I'm gonna try to play. I'm gonna play a YouTube video right now, just so you guys can see. Um, so these are manatees in the Florida Spring. This is Crystal River.
I'm Captain John Span with the Plantation Adventure Center, and we are here today swimming with manatees. So this is the world's largest natural congregation of manatees in the wintertime. So we have over 700 plus manatees that will come into this bay alone. Citrus County, which is made up of several bays and rivers like this, has over 1,000 of the Florida manatees come here in the winter months. So it's a really unique place. And it is one of those few places that it is where you can get in the water with these animals. Well, we're up here on the Nature Coast, so that's the best part, as it's truly like old Florida, as you can see behind me. We don't have the beaches, so we still have the mangrove forest and the swamp marshes. And to be able to come up here and get in the water, it's just an amazing experience. It really goes back to that curiosity. There's not many animals that are in the wild, especially as big as manatees, because the average manatee is 8 to 1,200 pounds, that will literally come up nose to nose with you or grab onto you or push onto you. Just literally natural behavior, hanging out with people.
Oh, I love it. I love being with these big, gentle giants. They're just so cute.
So as you can see here, right? The springs are really a special place. Like manatees are probably one of my favorite animal. I've had the opportunity to swim with them. Right, they come right up to you. Right, it's like they nibble in your hair, right? Because they think my hair is like seagrass. Right, they're just such a wonderful animal. Just like always, right? If you do see a manatee in the wild, you should never approach it. Right, you should always allow it to come to you. Right, you should never follow it or make it feel uncomfortable, right? It's like it is a wild animal. So you always have to treat everything with respect. But again, like springs are just one of those kind of special places that we have in our world that allow us to interact with such amazing animals. And speaking of these animals, right? It really it's really important to understand, this concept of biodiversity. So the biodiversity, it kind of sounds like this big fancy word, right? It kind of just means that it kind of just it pretty much just means that um there's a bunch of different types of animals. There's a bunch of different types of animals in the area. The more animals and plants and things you have in the area, the healthier it is, because the more resilient it is, right? When a storm or when humans are, or when humans do bad stuff, right? It's like, and there's a bunch of animals in the area, right? Because each one of these animals is doing a specific role, right? The ecosystem is able to is a lot stronger because you have so many different players. It's almost like being on a football team, right? The more players you have on your team, right? Each player is doing is when you have each player doing a specific role, right? The better the football team functions, right? Well, the same thing happens with the environment, right? When you have a bunch of different people doing their specific roles, the environment is able to work a lot stronger. Just like a football team, just like if a football team would get smaller, right? If I took the linebacker out, if I took the quarterback out, right, the football team wouldn't work as well, right? The same thing would happen with the environment. If I take the manatee out, or if I take the crayfish out, or if I take the striped bass out, right, it's not going to work as well, right? Because there's not going to be as many different players working together. So and that's why biodiversity is such an important part of maintaining a balanced ecosystem, and ensuring that each animal can live its best life, and we are part of that ecosystem, right? So just like the way a manatee or a crawfish or a striped bass, right, affects the ecosystem, we humans are too, and that's a really important thing to understand. We don't live outside of the environment, right? It's like, the environment doesn't just exist, for us to use it or abuse it or anything else, right? We're part of that cycle just as much as anything else is. And and like I mentioned, and just like I mentioned earlier, right? The Florida Springs are such an important, source of our water, right? It's where all the water comes to the surface from. And a lot of the water you drink actually comes from the springs. So next time you go to the spring, right, understand that's where the water you drink comes from. When you turn open the sink, when you take a shower, when you drink a glass of water, right, when you drink a water bottle, understand that's where your water comes from. So when you pollute it, right, when we don't do what we're supposed to do, that those pollutants go into our drinking water and we're affected. So a really common source, right? I think we've all heard of it, right? Is Zephyr Hills, right? The Zephyr Hills bottle that Morgan is gonna hand out to you, right? It's a common company, right, that gets drinking water from the springs, and it's extracted. What Zephyr Hills does as a company is that they essentially go to the springs and they suck up and they collect water, they filter it, they clean it, and then they put in a water bottle, and that's what you're drinking, right? So the water that you're drinking today, right now, the water that's coming out of your faucet or your shower comes directly from this wonderful ecosystem. And that's why it's important to keep the springs clean and free of pollutants. Every time you put pesticides in your lawn or too much fertilizer, or anytime a car's taking oil and and rain comes and washes it down those sewer pipes, well, those sewer pipes are going directly into our drinking water, and we're drinking that, and that's affecting us. you know Bad drinking water can make us sick. Bad drinking water can give you rashes. It can give you, it can give you breathing problems. It decreases our ability to enjoy these things. So, like, a lot of people go to the springs for kayaking and fishing. Well, when the water's polluted, right, because of what we're doing, we can't do that. It's like, so it's super duper important to just, really make sure that we're conserving these resources for future generations.
So as Vasilius was saying, when an ecosystem is functioning, there are so many different players, so many different roles that these animals play. So the Florida Keys is one of the key ecosystems of Florida and also the world. So the ecosystem that is in the Florida Keys is the coral reefs, right? And many of us are probably familiar with them. And basically, in order for these coral reef systems to function, it requires clean water. And this clean water first originates in these springs that are close to us in Gainesville, right? They come from the ground, they come up, and then they trickle down the state from Tallahassee, Gainesville area through rivers and streams and down to the Florida Everglades. And that's in the southern tip of Florida. And there it is filtered by mangroves and other filtrated plants. And these plants are able, kind of like a strainer when you have spaghetti and you put the spaghetti with water and you're able to just have the spaghetti with no water. The Everglades do that with water, essentially. They filter out all the bad stuff, all the toxins, all the pollutants, and it allows the water to go to the coral reef systems in the Florida Keys to have clean and clear water. So a lot of the animals in the Keys, as I was saying, play a huge role in the functioning of that ecosystem. So by show of hands, who can tell me what sort of animals are in the Florida Keys? I can think of a few. There are sharks, different fish like clownfish from Nemo, if everyone remembers that. There's actually an invasive species called the lionfish. It's black and white. They're not good because they're not from Florida, so they don't really have any competitors, and they have a lot of them and they overpopulate, right? So here you can see where the Florida Keys are. So it is from Crocker Reef or Fowey Rocks all the way down to Pulaski Shoal. It's that large strip. So here, like I was saying, there's a diverse ecosystem, which is the Florida Keys, right? And this clear water is imperative for the ecosystem and also for human consumption and recreation. So we can go swimming, go on the boat. And I'm sure some of you guys have heard of the Florida Keys and have been there before. So the coral reefs, like I was saying before, are very essential to the Florida ecosystem and everything else. And by show of hands, can anyone tell me or share with the class their favorite sea animal or marine mammal? Mine is probably an octopus. What is yours, Vasilios?
Mine's probably an octopus or a shark too.
Octopus or shark? Yeah, so these ecosystems are imperative for Florida, are very important for Florida and global functioning, right? There's a lot of animals that can travel around different seas throughout the world. They can come to the Florida Keys to gather food or to interact with other animals, to go elsewhere, right? So it's important that every step, basically every part of the coral reef system, so the coral reefs, the water, the animals maintain balance and can be cohesive and work together to maintain life. So I think it's cool how the waters in Gainesville, like the springs, right? The quality of those springs is important because it eventually makes its way down to the Florida Everglades and then to the Florida Keys. So every single water feature, so rivers, streams, springs that we're learning about today, and the Florida Keys all play a unique role in the Florida ecosystem and how these animals interact, how they live, and also how humans interact with it. So yeah, I think it's a really, really cool ecosystem to learn about, and just because of how important they are for both humans and animals, it's important to see how we can better the conditions of the Florida Keys and the springs and how we can play a part in ensuring that we live in a very healthy, prosperous society. So if you want to add anything, Cilius.
I mean, no, I think Morgan did a really good job. Just to kind of reiterate what you said, right? Every single one of these water features, right, is connected, right? So no matter what we do, anywhere in Florida, right? So whether you're in Talbot State, whether you're Bahamas State, right? Every single thing we put in the water, every single thing we take out of the water affects each other. So, always be really important, always be really aware of kind of what you're doing, of what piece of trash you're throwing out there, what piece, what you're putting on your lawn, what you're putting in your grass, right? Because it's all part of one beautifully connected system. And I think the more we realize that and the more that we do our part to protect that, right, the better the more beautiful these habitats gonna be for generations to come.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye everybody.